Shattered framed the envelope on the kitchen counter seemed innocent enough, but Olivia Harrington knew better. She'd watched Thomas place it there with calculated precision before announcing he was going for a drive. 23 years of marriage had taught her to read his moods like weather patterns, and today's forecast was catastrophic. Her hands trembled as she slid a finger beneath the flap. The legal letterhead confirmed what she'd suspected for months. Divorce papers, clinical and cold. "You don't have to look so shocked," Thomas said, startling her. He stood in the doorway, keys dangling from his fingers. At 52, he'd recently embraced a midlife Renaissance designer clothes, a gym membership, and a convertible that screamed desperation to anyone but him. "I thought you were gone," Olivia said, her voice smaller than intended. "Forgot my sunglasses." He retrieved them from the counter, then paused. "We should talk about this like adults." Olivia smoothed her paint-stained apron she'd been preparing. Canvases for her weekend hobby class when he'd dropped his bombshell. "Is there someone else?" Thomas's hesitation was answer enough. "Jacqueline, for marketing. She's 29. Of course she is." Olivia felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart that had been fracturing for years, but her perception. Of herself? What happened to growing old together? "That's just it, Liv. You're already there." Thomas gestured vaguely at her comfortable clothes, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun. "You stopped trying years ago? No ambition? No spark? You're content teaching art to housewives while I'm expanding the business internationally?" "Mean the business we built together? The one I stepped back from to raise our daughter? And Melody's at college now?" "What's your excuse?" he sighed, softening his tone in a way that felt rehearsed. "You're holding me back, Liv. I need someone who understands my world, who can stand beside me at corporate events without talking about watercolors and community art programs." Each word landed like a precision strike. Olivia had spent decades supporting his dreams, managing their home, raising their daughter, all while nurturing her artistic passion on the side. Now he made it sound like a character flaw. "I won't fight you," she said finally. "You want freedom? Take it." 3 weeks later, Olivia stood in an empty apartment 40 miles away in Everbrook, a coastal town known for its arts community. The divorce had proceeded with ruthless efficiencies, had been planning this for months, arranging finances, consulting lawyers. He'd kept the sprawling suburban house, while she'd taken a modest settlement and her personal belongings. Melody had been furious with her father, but was stuck in finals at Berkeley. "Come stay with me this summer," she'd begged during their nightly calls. "I need to figure out who I am without him first," Olivia had answered, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. Now, surrounded by moving boxes and uncertainty, she approached the window overlooking the harbor. At 48, she was starting over. The thought terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. Her phone buzzed with a text from Melody. "Did you apply for that teaching position at the gallery?" Olivia glanced at her laptop where the application sat open but incomplete. Harbor View Gallery was seeking an instructor for their summer workshop series. It paid modestly but offered studio space, a luxury she couldn't currently afford. "Doing it now?" she replied, then added with determined fingers, "New beginnings, right?" As evening light spilled across wooden floors, Olivia unpacked her brushes and paints, first not the kitchen essentials or bedding. Setting up a makeshift workspace near the window, she positioned a blank canvas on her easel. For hours, she painted with furious energy, colors bleeding into one another, dark at first, then gradually lighter toward the edges. When she finally stepped back, breathless, she saw her emotions translated into abstract form, devastation at the center, possibility at the margins. It wasn't beautiful yet, but it was honest. And for the first time in 23 years, Olivia Harrington answered, to no one but herself. Empty palette, the Harborview Gallery, was a converted boathouse hall, exposed beams, and weathered wood. With floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the marina, Olivia arrived for her first day as the new workshop instructor an hour early. Nervousness and excitement competing for dominance. "You must be Olivia," called a woman with vibrant purple hair and an armful of jangling bracelets. "I'm Jeanette Morrow, gallery director and your new boss, though I prefer partner in artistic crime." "Thank you for taking a chance on me," Olivia said, shaking her hand. My teaching experience is limited to community center classes. Your portfolio spoke volumes, Jeanette assured her. Besides, formal credentials matter less than passion here. Come see your studio space. The room Jeanette led her to was modest, but flooded with northern light, a painter's dream. A placard beside the door read Artist in Residence Olivia Harrington. The sight of her name displayed so prominently brought unexpected tears to her eyes. Is something wrong? Jeanette asked. Olivia shook her head. It's been a while since I've been recognized for something that's entirely mine. Over the next few weeks, Olivia settled into a rhythm. Mornings in her studio, afternoons teaching, evenings exploring Everbrook's winding coastal paths. Her first workshop series, Finding Your Voice Through Color, had attracted a diverse group. Retirees seeking new hobbies, young professionals, escaping screen time, teenagers sent by hopeful parents, and then there was the man who always sat in the back corner, working silently with intense focus. Dominic Westbrook was an enigma. In his mid-50s, with salt and pepper hair and watchful, hazel eyes, he dressed in simple but impeccably tailored clothes. He rarely spoke during class discussions, but worked with surprising dedication for someone who claimed to have zero artistic talent. On the third session, Olivia circulated among her students, offering guidance. When she reached Dominic's station, she found him frowning at a landscape that showed considerable improvement from his first attempts. "You're being too hard on yourself," she observed. "Your perspective has improved dramatically." "The horizon line's still crooked," he muttered, "and the proportions of the lighthouse are all wrong. Art isn't about perfection." Olivia studied his tense shoulders, the controlled precision in his brushstrokes. "What are you trying to say with this piece?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. "Say, I'm just trying to paint a lighthouse. Humor me." "Why this lighthouse? Why these colors?" Dominic set down his brush. "My brother and I used to race sailboats in this bay," he said finally. "The lighthouse was our turning point. He died last year, cancer. I promised him I'd learn to paint it someday." The simple confession hung between them. "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly. "Everyone is." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's why I don't mention it." After class, Olivia found Dominic lingering, examining student work displayed on the walls. "Your technique is quite advanced for someone who just began teaching," he remarked. "I've been painting all my life," she explained. "Teaching is the new part." "What brought you to Everbrook?" The question was innocent enough, but Olivia felt her defenses rise. "A fresh start." Dominic nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Those are surprisingly hard to come by." Later that week, Jeanette cornered Olivia in the supply room. "Do you have any idea who's been taking your class?" "My students?" Olivia asked, confused. "Dominic Westbrook." The Dominic Westbrook, founder of Westbrook Innovation Fund. The man practically rebuilt this town after the economic crash 10 years ago. Jeanette's bracelets clattered as she gesticulated. "His foundation funds our community outreach program. Mentioned his brother passed away," Olivia said carefully. "Jonathan Westbrook, brilliant marine biologist. They were incredibly close." Jeanette lowered her voice. "Dominic became something of a recluse afterward. He runs his foundation from his estate on the headland, but rarely makes public appearances. Any more? You must be quite the teacher to lure him out." That evening, as twilight settled over the harbor, Olivia sat on her small balcony sketching the boats. Her phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Lawyers need signature on final property. Transfer available tomorrow." The message was followed by a photo, presumably accidentally, showing him with a young blonde woman at what appeared to be a resort, both holding tropical drinks. Jacqueline, undoubtedly. Olivia's hand tightened around her pencil until it snapped. 6 weeks since the separation, and the pain still ambushed her at unexpected moments. Not pain for losing Thomas, she realized, but for losing the future she'd believed in, the certainty of growing old with someone who valued her. The following morning, Olivia arrived at her studio to find a package wrapped in brown paper. It was a book of maritime art with a simple note for reference. "Your student with the crooked horizons." Tucked between the pages was a flyer for an upcoming charity auction benefiting marine conservation, the Westbrook Foundation's annual gala. Someone had written on it, "Our gallery will be showcasing selected works. Consider submitting something." Olivia traced her finger over the elegant embossed invitation. For years, Thomas had discouraged her from pursuing art professionally, insisting it remain a lovely hobby. Now standing in a studio with her name on the door, she allowed herself to imagine a different path, one where her work might hang on gallery walls, where her voice might finally be heard. She opened her sketchbook to a fresh page and began to draw. First, Stroke's morning fog clung to Everbrook's shoreline as Olivia walked the beach, collecting fragments of sea glass. Each piece worn smooth by time and tide reminded her of resilience. 3 months in this coastal town had begun reshaping her edges too, softening the sharp corners of betrayal. "You're out early," called a familiar voice. Dominic Westbrook stood several yards away, black Labrador retriever circling his legs. Dressed in running clothes, he looked less formal than in her classes, more approachable. "I could say the same," Olivia replied, dropping another green fragment into her pocket. "Morning runs with Brunswick Heroer daily ritual." He gestured to the dog, who bounded over to investigate Olivia with enthusiastic sniffs. "He approves of you. High praise." She knelt to scratch behind the dog's ears. "I didn't take you for a morning person. Insomnia makes everyone a morning person eventually." Something in his tone suggested this was more a confession than joke. "What brings you to the beach at dawn?" Olivia held up her collection. "Raw materials. I'm working on a sea glass mosaic for the charity auction submission. You're entering?" Interest sparked in his eyes. Jeanette was rather persuasive. Olivia smiled, remembering the gallery director's insistence. Something about expanding my artistic footprint. They fell into step together along the shoreline, Brunswick racing ahead to chase seagulls. Conversation flowed more easily outside. The classroom about art, about Everbrook's history, about the conservation project the auction would benefit. "My brother initiated the marine sanctuary proposal," Dominic explained. "After his diagnosis, finishing it became his obsession. 8. Auction helps fund research scholarships in his name." "It sounds like he was remarkable," Olivia said gently. "Jonathan was the visionary. I just write the checks." He bent to retrieve a perfectly intact cobalt blue piece, offering it to her. "For your mosaic." Their fingers brushed during the exchange, a momentary connection that lingered. Over the following weeks, these morning encounters became routine. Sometimes they walked in comfortable silence. Other times they talked for hours. Dominic gradually revealed pieces of himself, his childhood sailing competitions with Jonathan, the technology company he'd built and eventually sold, his foundation's work creating sustainable economic opportunities in struggling coastal communities. In turn, Olivia shared her own story, her early artistic promise, the gradual sublimation of her dreams to support her husband's career, the shock of abandonment. "He told me I was conventional," she admitted one morning, skipping stones across the glassy water. 23 years together, and that was his parting assessment. Dominic watched her with an intensity that made her both uncomfortable and seen. Some people confuse comfortable with conventional. They're afraid of depth, so they chase novelty instead, spoken like someone who's given it thought. "I married young," he offered. Catherine was brilliant, a marine biologist like Jonathan. "When she left after 3 years, she said I was emotionally unavailable." His smile held old pain. "She wasn't wrong. What happened? I buried myself in work. Built an empire. Convinced myself it was enough." He looked out toward the horizon. Jonathan's illness changed that perspective. Nothing clarifies priorities like watching someone run out of time. In her studio, Olivia's mosaic took shape, fractured pieces forming a cohesive whole. She worked with renewed purpose, often losing track of time until Jeanette knocked on her door with reminders to eat. Her classes grew in popularity. With a waiting list forming for the fall session, the gallery began displaying some of her smaller works, which sold quickly to locals and tourists alike. "Your blooming melody," observed during their weekly video call. "Dad's an idiot for letting you go." "Maybe he did me a favor," Olivia replied, surprising herself with the genuine sentiment behind the words. One rainy afternoon, Dominic appeared at her studio doorway, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. "Am I interrupting?" "Is finishing up?" Olivia set down her tools, noticing he held a small wrapped package. "I have a favor to ask," he said, placing the package on her workbench. Jonathan's birthday would have been next week. I found these among his things. Inside the package was a collection of weathered sea glass, carefully labeled with locations and dates. He collected pieces from every research site he visited, Dominic explained. I thought perhaps the request, so personal, so vulnerable, touched her deeply. I'd be honored. Working with Jonathan's collection gave the mosaic new dimension. Olivia integrated his pieces prominently, each fragment carrying its own history. When Dominic visited to see her progress, the emotion on his typically guarded face told her she'd captured something essential. "It's more than I imagined," he said quietly. "Art often is," she replied, watching him study the evolving piece. Seascape at dawn, broken pieces forming something whole. Light emerging from darkness. The evening before the submission deadline, Olivia worked late. The completed mosaic captured both fragility and strength. Glass fragments arranged to depict the lighthouse at sunrise. Jonathan's pieces forming the rays of light extending across the water. She titled it Borrowed Light, a reference to the sea glass itself, transformed by its journey, reflecting rather than generating illumination. As she prepared to leave, Dominic appeared in her doorway. "I hoped I'd find you here." He hesitated, then continued with uncharacteristic uncertainty. "The auction gala is next Saturday. Would you consider attending as my guest?" Invitation hung between them, weighted with unspoken significance. "I haven't been to a formal event since... Olivia trailed off, thinking of the countless corporate functions where she'd stood in Thomas's shadow. Since before Dominic finished for her. Me neither. Maybe it's time for us both. In the silence that followed, Olivia recognized the parallels. In their journeys to people learning to trust again after different forms of abandonment. The mosaic on her workbench stood as testament to that possibility, broken pieces creating something new, something beautiful. "Yes," she said simply. "I'd like that." His smile, genuine and unrehearsed, transformed his face. "I'll pick you up at 7?" After he left, Olivia remained in her studio, fingers tracing the edges of sea glass pieces, now permanently set in place. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond survival, one where she might actually thrive. Bold colors the week before the gala passed in a blur of anticipation and doubt. Olivia vacillated between excitement and panic, questioning her decision to attend. She hadn't navigated a high society event in years, and never on her own terms. "You need something spectacular to wear?" Jeanette declared, appearing at her studio with coffee and determination. "Something that makes a statement." "I'm not sure I want to make a statement," Olivia protested. "Your art is making one, why shouldn't you?" Jeanette studied her thoughtfully. "You've been hiding behind neutrals since you arrived. It's time to embrace some color." That afternoon, they visited Madeline's boutique, where Jeanette charmed the owner into bringing out her exclusive pieces. After numerous attempts, Olivia emerged in a midnight blue gown with a subtle shimmer that caught the light as she moved. Jeanette breathed. "You look like the night sky." Studying her reflection, Olivia barely recognized herself. The dress accentuated curves she'd long disguised beneath practical clothing, while the color deepened the blue of her eyes. With her silver-streaked hair swept up, she looked elegant. Distinguished, had nothing like the faded woman Thomas had dismissed. "I'll take it," she said, surprising herself with the decisiveness. 3 days before the gala, Olivia received an email that nearly derailed everything. The subject line read, "Everbrook Charity Auction Attendees." As a contributing artist, she'd been copied on correspondence about final arrangements. Scanning the guest list automatically attached, her heart stopped at a familiar name, Thomas. Harrington Global Investments, Table 7. Her ex-husband would be attending. With him, undoubtedly, would be Jacqueline. Olivia's finger hovered over the phone, tempted to cancel with Dominic. Then anger flared. Why should she retreat? This was her new community, her emerging life. Thomas was the interloper here. Still, her hands trembled as she called Melody. Dad's attending the same charity event? Her daughter asked incredulously after Olivia explained. What are the odds? Harrington Global is expanding its environmental investment portfolio, Olivia quoted from the email. Apparently, marine conservation is suddenly fascinating to him, her tax-deductible Melody said dryly. Mom, you can't back out. Your artwork is being featured. I know, but seeing him with her, Olivia's voice caught. I'm not sure I'm ready. Which is exactly why you should go. Looking gorgeous. With your intriguing new friend. Dominic isn't, Olivia began. Isn't what? Successful? Respected. Genuinely interested in your art and ideas. Melody challenged. Because from everything you've told me, he's all those things. The conversation left Olivia thoughtful. What exactly was Dominic to her? A friend, certainly. Supporter of her art, undeniably. But the quiet anticipation she felt when they were together suggested something more complex developing. The evening of the gala arrived with crystal-clear skies and a gentle breeze off the water. Olivia had just finished fastening a simple pendant necklace when her doorbell rang. Dominic stood on her threshold in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking both distinguished and slightly nervous. His expression when he saw her made every moment of preparation worthwhile. You look... Way began, then seemed to reconsider his words. Luminous. Like your art. The Westbrook Foundation's annual gala was held at Everbrook's historic lighthouse keeper's mansion, a sprawling Victorian estate overlooking the bay. As their car approached, Olivia glimpsed the illuminated gardens, the string quartet on the terrace, the parade of designer gowns and tuxedos. Having second thoughts? Dominic asked quietly, noticing her tension. My ex-husband is here tonight, she admitted. With his 29-year-old girlfriend? Understanding dawned in his eyes. Ah, hence the death grip on your clutch, Olivia. Looked down at her white-knuckled hands and laughed despite herself. Is it that obvious? Only to someone familiar with dread? He covered her hand with his. We can leave any time. Just say the word. His understanding calmed her. No, my work is being featured. I've earned this evening. They were announced at the entrance, Mr. Dominic Westbrook and Ms. Olivia Harrington, which drew immediate attention. Whispers followed them as Dominic guided her through the crowd, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. Everyone's staring, she murmured. Because I haven't attended my own gala in 3 years, he replied. And because you're stunning. The evening unfolded in a series of introductions and conversations. Dominic stayed close, seeming to anticipate her discomfort in certain social situations and smoothly redirecting when necessary. His protectiveness was subtle but unmistakable. In the main gallery, Olivia's mosaic had been given prominent placement. Guests clustered around it, discussing the technique and meaning. Several approached to compliment her directly, including the museum curator from Portland who expressed interest in her future work. You're making quite an impression, Dominic observed, handing her a champagne flute. Jonathan would have loved your piece. He believed broken things held special beauty. The genuine emotion in his voice moved her. Before she could respond, a familiar laugh cut through the ambient noises sound ingrained in her memory through decades of marriage. Thomas stood near the bar, one arm possessively around a slender blonde. He looked prosperous and confident in his designer tuxedo. Holding court with several business associates, Olivia froze, her champagne halfway to her lips. Dominic followed her gaze, his expression sharpening with understanding. Would you like to leave? He asked again. She considered it for a moment, then straightened her shoulders. No, but I would like to see the garden terrace you mentioned. Preferably now. They slipped outside into the cool evening air. Fairy lights twinkled in the sculpted hedges, and the sound of waves breaking against the cliffs below provided a soothing counterpoint to the string quartet. Better? Dominic asked when they found a quiet corner. Much. Olivia took a deep breath. I'm sorry, I thought I was prepared. No apology needed. He studied her face in the gentle illumination. For what it's worth, anyone who couldn't recognize your value doesn't deserve a moment of your discomfort. The simple validation, something Thomas had withheld for years, nearly undid her composure. Dominic seemed to sense this, changing the Subject to discuss the lighthouse visible in the distance, the one from his painting attempts, and her mosaic. They were laughing at his self-deprecating account of his earliest artistic disasters when a voice interrupted. "Olivia, is that you?" She turned to find Thomas standing there, surprise evident on his face. Close up, she noticed details her distance had obscured, the slight puffiness around his jawline, the artificial precision of his tan, the calculating assessment in his eyes as he took in her appearance and companion. "Thomas," she acknowledged coolly. "I didn't expect to see you here." Likewise, his gaze shifted to Dominic. "Thomas Harrington, Harrington Global Investments. Dominic Westbrook." The handshake they exchanged appeared cordial, but Olivia noticed the subtle tension in Dominic's posture. Recognition flickered in Thomas's eyes. "Westbrook Foundation? This is your event?" "Among other things," Dominic replied mildly. "I understand. You're expanding into environmental investments. Quite a departure from your usual ventures." Thomas launched into an explanation of market trends and diversification strategies. Olivia observed him with newfound clarity, the performative confidence, the careful networking, even in casual conversation. Had he always been this transparent? "Your ex-wife's artwork is the highlight of tonight's auction," Dominic interrupted smoothly. "Her borrowed light piece has already received several substantial bids." Thomas blinked, clearly caught off guard. His gaze swung back to Olivia. "You're exhibiting here? Professionally?" The genuine astonishment in his voice confirmed what she'd long suspected. He had never truly seen her potential, had never believed in her talent beyond hobbyist level. "I'm the featured artist for Harborview Gallery this season," she replied, hearing the quiet confidence in her own voice. "My fall exhibition opens next month." Before Thomas could respond, the blonde appeared at his elbow, curiosity evident as she assessed Olivia. "Tommy, they're beginning the auction presentations. We should find our seats." The diminutive Tommy nearly made Olivia laugh aloud. In 23 years of marriage, he had always insisted on Thomas. "Of course," turned back to them, with a tight smile. "Good seeing you, Olivia." "Mr. Westbrook." As they walked away, Dominic's hand found hers, a gentle pressure conveying understanding without words. Together, they watched Thomas guide his companion toward the main hall, his posture rigid with what Olivia recognized as suppressed irritation. "Shall we?" Dominic asked, offering his arm as they followed at a distance. Olivia realized the encounter had affected her less than anticipated. The man who had once held such power over her self-perception now seemed diminished. Somehow, not by comparison to Dominic's wealth or status, but by the revelation of his own limitations. Inside, the auctioneer was preparing to begin. Spotlights illuminated each featured piece, including her mosaic. From across the room, Thomas watched her, his expression unreadable. But for the first time since their separation, Olivia found she didn't care what he thought at all. Masterpiece revealed, sold to bidder number 47 for $12,000. The auctioneer's announcement drew applause as Olivia's mosaic, the final piece of the evening, found its new owner. The amount exceeded her wildest expectations, nearly taking her breath away. "Congratulations," Dominic whispered, his smile genuine and warm. From across the ballroom, Thomas stared, his expression shifting between disbelief and reassessment. His young companion appeared bored, checking her phone surreptitiously beneath. The table after the auction concluded, attendees mingled over dessert and coffee. Collectors and gallery owners approached Olivia, exchanging cards and discussing potential commissions. Each conversation reinforced what she was only beginning. To fully grasp her talent had value, her voice deserved to be heard. "Ms. Harrington," called a distinguished woman with silver hair. "I'm Eleanor Prescott, director of the Coastal Arts Foundation. Your integration of personal narrative and environmental themes is precisely what our fall showcase is missing. You consider contributing several pieces?" Before Olivia could respond, Thomas materialized beside them. "Eleanor, I didn't realize you knew my wife." "Wife," Olivia corrected quietly. Eleanor's eyebrow arched with interest. "We've just met, actually. Her work speaks for itself." "Olivia always had a charming little hobby," Thomas said with calculated dismissiveness. "Nice to see her taking it more seriously now." The condescension in his tone was familiar, subtle undermining tactic he'd employed throughout their marriage. Once, it would have diminished her, made her question her worth. Now she recognized it for what it was, the desperate flailing of a man confronting his miscalculation. It was never a hobby, Thomas, she replied evenly. You just preferred to see it that way. Dominic appeared at her side, his presence reassuring. Eleanor, wonderful to see you. I see you've discovered our resident genius. The conversation shifted, leaving Thomas on the periphery, a novel experience for a man accustomed to commanding attention. When Jacqueline beckoned impatiently from their table, he retreated with obvious reluctance. Later, as the event wound down, Dominic led Olivia onto the terrace, overlooking the moonlit bay. The lighthouse beam swept across the water in steady rhythm. I have a confession, he said, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I was the final bidder on your mosaic. Surprise rippled through her. You bought my piece? Something because I didn't want to overshadow your moment. His eyes held hers steadily, and because I have a proposal. The Foundation funds an artisan residence program at marine conservation sites worldwide. The position's been vacant since... double quotes. He hesitated. Since Catherine held it years ago. Olivia absorbed this revelation. You want me to apply? I want you to consider it. He took her hands gently. You found your voice here, Olivia, imagine? What you might create with the entire ocean as your studio. The opportunity he described was beyond anything she'd imagined traveling to research stations. Creating art that documented marine ecosystems. Working with scientists to translate their findings into visual narratives for public education. What? About my classes? The gallery? She asked, mind racing. Jeanette already has a sabbatical structure in place for visiting artists. You'd have a position waiting whenever you returned. His thumb traced circles on her palm. If you wanted to return, the implication hung between them. But this might be the beginning of something much larger than a professional opportunity. Across the garden, she glimpsed Thomas watching them, his expression a complex mixture of regret and dawning comprehension. He raised his glass in a gesture that might have been acknowledgement or surrender before turning away. Olivia felt the last threads of her old life finally release. For months she'd been healing, rebuilding, rediscovering herself piece by piece like the sea glass in her art. Now, standing beside a man who saw her completely. Facing possibilities that once seemed unimaginable, she recognized the truth. She hadn't just survived her husband's rejection, she had transcended it. The woman Thomas had discarded as conventional and stagnant now stood at the threshold of an extraordinary life. One of her own creation. I'll need time to think, she told Dominic. Of course, his smile held promise rather than pressure. We have time. As the lighthouse beam swept across the water again, Olivia made a silent promise to herself. Whatever path she chose, whether traveling the world, creating environmental art, building a name in galleries across the country, or some combination of both, she would never again make herself smaller to accommodate someone else's limitations. The broken pieces of her past had formed something new, not despite their fractures, but because of them. Like sea glass transformed by its journey, she had emerged stronger, more authentic, and infinitely more beautiful than before. And that she realized as Dominic's hand found hers beneath the starlit sky was the masterpiece she'd been creating all along.